Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a weekly deep dive into the world of college admissions.
My name is Linda, and I'm originally from Michigan, now living in the St. Louis metro area. I'm a college coach with School Match for You and have a daughter at University of Chicago.
I'm Lisa, and I'm a clinical psychologist and college counselor. I have a daughter in college, a daughter in high school, and a son in middle school. After 30 years in Chicago, we recently moved to North Carolina.
My name is Mark. I'm a college coach in Atlanta and the parent of two daughters. Karis, a graduate of Davidson College, and she is the founder of the Spanish tutoring company, SpanishHelpToday.com. And Joy has a bachelor's degree from the University of Georgia and a master's degree from North Carolina State University. She works in private practice in Raleigh as a mental health therapist. And I'm so blessed to be able to work alongside both my beautiful daughters at School Match for You, a college counseling firm that I founded in 2010. Good morning, friends. I'm in great spirits today for a lot of different reasons. My cousin Neil from Oklahoma is at our place for the first time ever. I think of Neil as being from Chicago growing up, but he's in Oklahoma now, so that's always great. And shout out to my youngest daughter, Joy, who turns 25 on Wednesday. By the way, advice, if you have younger kids, spend as much time as you can with them because the years, they fly by and you'll never get that time back. Several listeners also wrote in this week to say they couldn't afford to hire a college counselor, a private college counselor, so they made our podcast their college counselor. And it's really been helping them. And so that delights me, tells me we're having some success with our mission, which is to make college knowledge available to all. And I'm also in great spirits. We had more first-time listeners support our podcast financially with a donation in one day than we'd had in the previous 2 months. So we're grateful to that. You know, our expenses have been covered the last 3 years, 71%, 73%, 75% by the podcast. This year, we may get up over 80%. If for some reason we ever did have more come in than our expenses, we would just use it to improve our website or to improve the podcast in general. But I also want to say, make sure your name is spelled correctly. We had a listener who caught an error after I said that before, with the spelling of their name under yourcollegeboundkid.com. Under donation, you'll see the list of all of our supporters. It should be properly listed in your state with correct spelling. And please let us know. My wife's name Anitra, but people call her Anita all the time. I just assume that, it's an error, Anita, and it absolutely grinds her gears. So it's really made me conscious of trying to make sure that we get, pronunciation and spelling right for names. And I'm terrible at it, but at least I try. And also, if you didn't get the bonus content, how to write the YS essay, it's about 85 to 90 minutes, but it's delivered over 4 successive Saturdays in your inbox. Please let us know that as well. Had somebody who donated and wondered if they could get the last couple ones they missed. Absolutely. If anybody donates, we send them part 1 and part 2, which went out the last 2 Saturdays. The final 2 parts will go out these last 2 Saturdays. All right, well, let's get to today's episode. Very excited about today's episode. I want to say a word about ED. Then I'm going to share a crowdsourcing project I want us all to work on. Then I take on my least favorite question in college admissions. Is it better to get an A in an easy class or a B in a harder class? And then we have a brand new interview with Derek Terrell from the Coalition for College. All right, let's dive in. So I said I'd say a word about ED. I've been curious since the Supreme Court made its decision on affirmative action. How is that going to change things? And one thing that is falling under closer scrutiny is early decision with some of the biggest brand names in college admissions are now publicly acknowledging that they're reevaluating their use of ED. And that's all I'm going to say for now, but know that Susan and I just made a commitment to have a robust discussion on this podcast about some of the conversations that are going on about ED. Everything we've heard about early decision, really for the most part, for going back 20 years, but certainly certainly since the great financial crisis, 07 through 09, has always gone in the direction of either more schools going to ED, getting rid of early action, adding ED, or schools taking a higher percentage of their class ED, or more aggressive recruitment for ED. But there are a few schools looking at reversing that and going in a different direction. So look for that probably in December, but possibly early January. Haven't made that decision yet because we haven't recorded it yet. We do have a date on the calendar. All right, my crowdsourcing idea. So this comes right out of the counseling. So I literally did a counseling session with a Chicago student 2 hours ago. And she asked me which schools on her list were going to require the FAFSA or the CSS profile for merit scholarships. So if you're a new listener, FAFSA for your application for federal student aid, federal form that goes to all schools. And then the CSS profile is also used to assess how much a family can pay, mostly by wealthier schools. Approximately 180 of the wealthier schools in the country require that document. But some schools have a policy saying, even if you're going to get merit money, not need-based, but merit, we still need the documentation. So my response to this student was, well, I don't know exactly, but I can tell you how you can find out. And I showed her how she could find that out. So, but then an idea popped in my mind, and I literally told her, I said, you just gave me a great idea, and I'm about to record a podcast. Why don't we have our listeners send in what you know, and we'll crowdsource the list. So if we have a lot of college counselors, they may know some of the schools that are requiring FAFSA or profile, and we have parents who are going through the process this year. You may not qualify for financial aid, but you've been told you need to complete a FAFSA or profile in order to get merit scholarship money. I know it's a small number, but I thought, why don't we take the list with feedback from everybody, and then we can just put it up on the website, and we can indicate crowdsourced from our listeners, and it can be a tool and a resource that everybody can have. So I'm very excited about that. If we get a good response, we'll do this with other things as well. So what I'm asking you to do is send an email to questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com, or you can text me at 404-664-4340, whichever you prefer, and indicate this school requires, make sure you say which one, FAFSA or CSS profile or both. And once again, this requires it for merit scholarship money. The forms are used to do a need-based analysis. All right. So somebody who wants financial aid does need to submit them. I'm not asking if the school's requiring you to complete the form if you're looking for need-based aid. I'm saying they require it if you want merit-based aid. Now, I know what some of you are probably thinking. Why would a school require a form that's designed to assess need-based aid if they're giving out a merit scholarship? Well, I didn't know the answer to that until I interviewed Michael Runewitz on this podcast in 2018. He's the director of financial aid at WashU. And he explained it to me. He said, Mark, we get more work study money the more FAFSAs we have completed. Remember, work study is a program where a student can work on campus or at an off-campus nonprofit and get paid. Well, what a lot of people don't know is that money you're getting paid, it comes from the school, but as much as half of it is actually coming from the federal government. It's a federal government-based program. So from a school standpoint, they can pay you for 50 cents on the dollar, but you still get your full pay because the federal government's throwing in the other half. They want to have as much work study money as possible to help students out with jobs. So that's one reason why schools require it. Well, you said, okay, that's great for the FAFSA. Why would somebody ever require the profile? Profile doesn't have anything to do with federal money. It's more about institutional money. There may be reasons beyond what I'm going to share here, but here's one reason that some schools like to see a CSS profile before they give merit money. Occasionally, I will see a school say, we give merit money, but we're sensitive to need when we give merit money. So what does that mean? It means that if we have two people we're considering for a merit scholarship, and one of them makes $100,000, the family, and the other one, the family makes $500,000, that we will most likely pick the student that makes $100,000. Well, you say, well, wouldn't they qualify for need-based aid? Why would they need to have merit? Most schools are unable to give people the need-based aid that they qualify for. Very, very few schools can do that. 3.5% actually, last I read. Most schools just don't have that much money to give you what you need. That's why schools make a really big deal out of the point when they say we meet 100% of demonstrated or calculated need, because so few schools do that. So most schools still are giving merit to their students that have great financial need, because they're like, well, we're not just going to go eeny, meeny, miny, moe. We're going to obviously allocate the money to the strongest kids in our applicant pool. But some of them are need sensitive. And so that's one reason why a school may require the CSS profile. So anyway, please send that in. I'm really excited about this. If we get a really good response, like I said, we'll repeat this, but we talk about being a listening family, and it's a way we could support each other and pool our knowledge. Crowdsourcing. All right. Now we have to turn our attention to the question that's put a couple gray hairs on my head. This is the most common question that many admission officers will say that they're not common at all for an admission officer to say. The most frequently asked question that I get is it better to get an A in the easier class or to get a B in the harder class? So why do I hate this question? I have two options when it comes to answering this question, and I don't like either one. So I can give a terse, succinct answer with a lot of brevity, but then I don't capture all the nuance. Or I can give a detailed answer that captures all the nuance, but it's going to take me almost 15 minutes to do it. So I thought our listeners may be interested in that longer, more detailed, more complex, more accurate answer, and why I don't like this question. And it's so complex. Even that I don't ask it, it's the exact kind of question I could see myself asking, knowing how I used to be back at, this age. So it's not like it's an unfair question. It's just a question I don't like because it's so complex. All right, so let's dive in. And why is it complex? Once again, the question we're talking about is it better to get an A in the easier class or B in the more difficult class? Well, the first reason that this is so hard is because I have to start with this question. What is the goal? Is the goal to get into college or when you get there? I have two quick stories on this one. I was working with a student last year at a very prominent New England boarding school, helping with the college process. And I could tell the dad had really, really high expectations for the kid to kind of go to brand name U. And he was really strong, but I was just making the point with him that there's no guarantees, and you're going to be in a super competitive applicant pool because of the caliber of the students that you're at. And I just don't want you to think because you're at brand name boarding school that means that automatically, your son's going to necessarily get into these very, very ambitious options. And the dad said something that I thought was awesome. He said, Stuck, people call me Stuck. That's my nickname. He's like, Stuck, I didn't send my kid to boarding school to get into more elite colleges. I sent him there so that he'd be prepared when he got to college. And I was like, he gets it. All right, story number 2. And that student actually ended up to be fortunate. For him, it worked out. He was talented, applied ED. It worked out for him. He's in his first choice school doing really well, but it doesn't always work that way. All right, story number 2. Now I'm taking you to Marietta, Georgia, which is just outside Atlanta. So I'd worked with this family that lived there, and they always had a really big graduation party for their student when they ended up graduating. So I go to the graduation party, and I have a conversation with one of the best friends of the student that I worked with. And the student shares the story with me how she had a lot of B's in high school in her AP classes. And she also said she got a lot of 3s on the APs and some 2s. And it was kind of hard because her friends were getting 4s and 5s and they were getting A's, and she worked her tail off, but she was mostly getting B's and a couple C's sprinkled in there. But then she said, but when I got to college, a lot of my friends were struggling with some of the classes that were easy for me. And it's because I took those rigorous classes in high school. So that's why I say part of the answer depends on what's the goal here. Is the goal to get into the more selective school, or is the goal to excel when you get there? So that's a factor. So I know you're thinking, well, that's easy. Why are you saying it's so hard? I guess doing well is better than getting in. So take the hardest classes. As my wife likes to say, whoa, Nelly, whoa, Nelly. It means slow down like you're riding a horse. I want to share another story. This comes back to when I was in Pennsylvania doing college counseling. I'm talking to a student who took all these really, really rigorous classes, got C's in those classes, and some of them really limited her options for college. So is the goal more to get into the more selective school or to not? For that person, it was getting into the more selective school that was more important. So they were a little discouraged about that. Here's the other thing you have to think about. What if taking those more rigorous classes imperils your mental health? What if it greatly impacts your confidence? What if it keeps you from having balance in your life? Then is it worth it? That's a big price to pay, even if you're going to do well once you get there or you're prepared for harder classes. So that has to be factored in. And it also has to be factored in what's the priority of the family or the person. Maybe for them, it is more important to them to get in on the front end. I'm not trying to imply it's easier to get in with less rigorous classes and high grades, because we know that more selective schools, we know that how important it is to them that students do take rigor. But what I will say is taking rigor and getting C's is not going to increase your chances. I don't know how to say it, so I'll just say it this way, and I hope it doesn't come out wrong. It's actually better, just from a getting in standpoint, not to take the more rigorous class and to, if you're going to be getting grades in that C range. And for some schools, getting grades in that especially B, especially low B range, it's not going to be better because you took the class and now you prove to the school you can't handle the work. There are some cases where not taking the class and have them wonder if you would have gotten the grade is your better option. Case in point, I'll use my own daughter as an example. So Karis is really strong at English and history and foreign language especially. And she's pretty good at math, but she has to work harder, and she's not good at science. So she had done Davidson's summer 3-week program, and she knew she wanted to go to Davidson. So she was one of those clear apply EDs. And I knew their counseling staff. So I just asked them to just review her transcript going into her senior year. And shout out to Darren if he's listening. He was a great mission officer who worked with her at the time. So Darren looked at her transcript, and he said, this looks really strong in history. It looks really strong in foreign language. It looks strong in English. It looks strong in humanities. And she's got to calculus. She's going to get to calculus, I can see. But I'm not saying advanced sciences here. I really would recommend that you have her take an advanced science. Well, I know my daughter. She doesn't like advanced science. She's not as good at it. She was going to run the risk of not getting a good grade. So my consultation to her was don't take it, because if you take it and you get a lower grade, it really could imperil your chances. So, that has to be factored in as well. All right. Other reasons why I don't like it. This question, or let's say why this question is really hard for me. What if the B is in a core area related to your area of study? That could be a problem, especially at a highly selective school. So I was sitting in Emory's reading process, and they were reading in an area that was highly resourced, where they got a lot of students from, and it was a regular admission process. So it's more competitive than the ED round. And a student had on their transcript a B+ in AP Chem and a B+ in, not even a B, but a B+ in AP Bio. And they indicated they were interested in pre-med. So one thing about Emory, Center for Disease Control, started all there at Emory. Half the people applied to Emory are going there to be in health science, pre-med, that track. So it's a super, super competitive pool. And so, Emory does community-based evaluation. So you had 2 readers there. And then one of the readers says, a B plus in AP Chem and a B plus in AP Bio, and you're in pre-med and you're in the regular round and you're coming from X school. And that was a pretty quick, that was a deny. So is the B in your correlated area of study? That's also a really important question. Okay. Now, I don't want someone to think, uh-oh, snap, I'm screwed. You just took it from B to B plus and told me that that's not good enough? So let me say something, and this is important. Sometimes when schools are answered this question, is it better to get an A in the regular B in the harder class? They'll say, it's better to get the A in the harder class. Everybody kind of chuckles and laughs. That was a good one, funny. But if you're talking about the highly rejective schools, if you're talking about what I oftentimes refer to as the 1%ers, about 25 schools in this country, they're not joking. They're serious. So in some pools, they're so selective that getting the B or even the B plus isn't going to cut it. But this is very important for me to say this. That was Emory's pool. Here's all the nuance to this question. Let's take another student, also pre-med, also B plus in AP Chem and AP Bio, also wanting to apply as a pre-med major from from a highly resourced school, and it's a highly resourced family, but they're not applying to someplace as selective as Emory. Those grades could be perfectly fine. So the schools you're in is extremely important, and I just can't unpack all of that in a succinct answer when someone asks me this question. Okay, people are saying, okay, I get it, stuck. No, there's a lot more. So let's talk about some other factors, why this question is so difficult. What are your other grades? Is this the lone B on your transcript or one of a few Bs? Or is your whole transcript littered with Bs? That's a factor. Here's something else to consider. What grade are we talking about? Big difference between a B in 9th and a B in the fall or spring of 11th. Big difference. There's even a big difference in fall of 10th versus 11th grade. All right, I'm not done. Here's another factor. What are your hooks? Are you meeting certain institutional priorities for the school? Let's say you have a parent and they're giving an 8-figure gift, and you've already gotten the wink, wink, nod, nod. It really doesn't matter if you get the B. The school's looking at it as, do you know what we can do with that $10 to $20 million? How many more students we can help? A certain person can do the academic program. We're not taking someone in that's not admissible. Sure, they're going to be on the lower end. That's why we have our bottom 25th percent. We can hide their test scores in the bottom 25th percent. So let's say their test scores are also lower for the school, and they can perfectly do the curriculum fine, no problem. So what hooks or institutional priorities are you coming? Are you underrepresented? Are you overrepresented? Are you in an area that meets the school's need? All these things are factors. All right, before I share this last point, I'm going to share another story. So when I left Westtown in Westchester, Pennsylvania to move to Atlanta, become director of a CBO known as KIP, Knowledge is Power program, I was originally director of high school placement. I started out there. They originally hired me to work with their 8th graders. They were trying to get them into like selective boarding schools throughout the whole East Coast and the West Coast, all over the country. So it was after a few years when they saw I'd done college admissions and college counseling that I migrated into the director of college counseling position. So this story is going to come from the 8th grade, but it applies 100% to college. Colleges function the exact same way. So in order to understand the story, you have to know we had 2 teachers in the 8th grade who were both very popular. We had Mr. Hampton, who was a science teacher, and Miss Hull, who was a history teacher. Remember, I'm director of high school placement, it's like director of college counseling. So I'm responsible for sending transcripts, and I have to write a counselor rec for all the kids. I have counselor calls with all the boarding schools all across the country. So I realized I had a problem. Mr. Hampton didn't believe in giving A's. So we had about 60 students, 55 to 65, depending on the year, in the 8th grade class. And he would give 1 or 2 A's for the entire grade. Miss Hull, on the other hand, I mean, it was not uncommon for 90% of the grades to be an A in her class. So I realized that Mr. Hampton's grades of B, which is a really good grade, was really going to be a problem for, like, I'm sending kids to places like Phillips Exeter and Andover and Hotchkiss and Deerfield and Lawrenceville and Choate Rosemary Hall and St. Paul's. I mean, all these schools, and Thatcher and Kate and all across the country. Like, these are some of the hard schools in the country to get into. They don't look very kindly on B's. So what I did is I created a grade distribution so that I could, and I shared that in the counselor letter and everything that I share with all the schools. So they could see, oh, only one person got an A. Oh, this is something that so many schools used to say this to me. Every school's got a teacher like that. We get it. Whereas with Ms. Hull, nobody was impressed with the A in that class because that's what 80 to 90% of kids got, depending on the year. So that's also a factor. So are you getting a B and you're one of the few Bs? Or does almost everybody get a B? You know, in working as an adjunct counselor with Susan at Westtown School, one thing I loved, and not that many schools did this, but Susan always had a grade distribution in our school profile. Colleges love that because it allows you to look at the grade in the context of the school and be able to tell whether or not it's a high grade or low grade. I know some of you are thinking, well, a lot of people don't even have school profiles, and most people don't even do grade distributions. How are people going to know? Remember, a lot of times colleges read by school group, meaning that they'll take all the students from one high school and have the same, usually the territory manager, and depending on the school, usually at least one other person involved in the reading process. And when you read as a school group like that, you actually can tell which teachers grade really, really hard or who grades softer. And you can take that into consideration and factor that into your decision when you're trying to decide if this is an acceptable grade. And then the last thing is it a low B or a high B or a mid B? That matters, especially at really selective schools. So let's say you're working off a traditional 90 to 100 as an A, 80 to 89 as a B. Is it an 80 or an 89? That's a really big difference. So there's just so much nuance here that I can't answer that question with any type of brevity. But if anybody asks it to me again, I'm going to be like, I want you to hear episode 384 and go like veg out on this for 15 or 20 minutes and you'll have an answer. Anyway, hopefully that was helpful. Friends, I'm excited about what you're going to hear next. It's an interview with Derek Terrell from the Coalition for College. And when I was at NACAC 2022 in Houston, I spent about an hour with Derek. I found him fascinating. He had done admissions at Caltech, and half our time we talked about Caltech. He had left Caltech that long ago. And then the other half we talked about the coalition, especially what they're doing with SCORE and SLATE. And so when I was talking with Linda, who's doing the, and I said, Linda, we really could use an interview on the Coalition for College. It's like the second biggest application next to the Common App, and we don't talk about it that much. I trust her to go find the right person. I have no idea who she's going to get. I just trust her. She's going to go find the right person. So I was really thrilled when Derek popped up as her interview. So it's time for us to transition to Linda's interview with Derek Terrell from the Coalition for College.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
Friends, as I said, we have a brand new interview with you today. It's Linda interviewing Derek Terrell from the Coalition for College. And in part one, Derek explains his backstory, walking us right up to his current role as Director of Community Engagement for the Coalition for College. Derek explains what the mission is of the Coalition for College. Derek explains what criteria college needs to meet in order to become a member of the Coalition for College. Derek talks about what is involved in the partnership between the Coalition for College and SCORE. Derek explains who SCORE is and what the platform provides. Derek explains why students should use SCORE to apply to college compared to other means. Derek talks about the partnership SCORE has with over 500 community-based organizations. Derek talks about the advisor portal and how it works with Coalition and SCORE. And Derek explains some new and exciting things the Coalition and SCORE will be rolling out over the next 3 to 5 years. Listen and enjoy.
Friends, this is Linda, and I'm excited to have Derek Terrell, the Director of Engagement for Coalition for College, joining me today. And Derek, rather than going into a big intro, I'm going to let you do that. So if you could just share with our listeners how your journey led you to the Coalition.
Hey there, Linda. Thank you so much for having me. So a little bit about my professional journey and my journey to the Coalition for College. So I previously worked in undergraduate admissions at Caltech, and that's how I first got involved with the organization as it was just launching in 2015 and 2016. So as a first-generation college student who relied on scholarships and financial aid to attend college, the mission of the Coalition really resonated with me, both personally and professionally. And I was able to get involved as Caltech was also a member institution. Fast forward to 2020, and I joined the Coalition for College as their Director of Engagement, as you just said, which allows me to still work closely with my colleagues in admissions and enrollment management, then also high school counselors and community-based organizations, as we all work together to support and empower students to see college as a part of their future.
You mentioned the mission. If you would, for our listeners who might be unfamiliar with the Coalition for College, would you explain what that is and talk about the mission?
Sure. So we are 170 plus colleges and universities working together to help students learn about, prepare for, and apply to college. And we have a focus on serving historically underrepresented students. So what that means is we're providing tools and resources to help students who might not have those tools and resources so that they can see college as a part of their future, as well as apply to college and receive good financial aid, and then ultimately attend the college, be successful, and go on to live successful and fulfilled lives.
It's a worthy mission. So tell me, you mentioned 170 plus colleges. What kind of criteria do colleges need to meet in order to be a part of the Coalition?
Yeah, so the criteria for colleges and universities to become members includes a commitment to access, affordability, and student success. So institutions that join the Coalition for College are expected to meet certain metrics around these three pillars, and then also demonstrate a dedication to the organization's mission, as I mentioned. So we use IPEDS, College Scoreboard, and the Office of Federal Student Aid data to determine this. And while the specific criteria may evolve over time, the Coalition's focus is always on fostering inclusivity and then providing support for students from all backgrounds.
Can we expect to see more schools joining the Coalition?
Absolutely. So we do recruit members year round, and we've seen some exciting growth over the past 2 years, and expect to see this continue with our new partnership with SCORE, which I'll hopefully get to talk about in a bit. But during my time at the Coalition alone, we've grown from under 150 schools to now over 170 this year.
Well, let's talk about that partnership with SCORE and talk about how that came about, what it means for students, for schools, for counselors, because it's kind of all encompassing, it sounds like.
So both the Coalition and SCORE, we share a mission to help more students find their way to a college that's a good fit for them. That's academically, socially, and financially. And we're both aware that there's a lot of room to streamline that process of applying and to use better technology to do that. So we're also really focused on serving students from under-resourced communities. So we created that strong partnership with SCORE around that work. For those of you who might not have heard about SCORE, it's a college guidance management software used by a growing number of high schools, but it's also a college search platform that's free for any student or parent to use. It offers personalized college search tools, an ability to create and organize a list of schools a student would like to follow and get more information from, as well as a list that they plan to apply to. And now, thanks to that partnership that I mentioned, students can actually work on their applications to Coalition schools right there in that same account.
So I know a lot of schools use SCORE, but still a lot of schools may use something like Naviance or Maya or something like that. So they can still apply to a Coalition school or use the Coalition app, even if their high school doesn't use SCORE.
Absolutely. So SCORE is that college planning platform. So students who are not even connected to a SCORE high school can go in, they can create an account as early as ninth grade. They can take the career assessments, they can take different quizzes to find a good college fit for them. There are different resources in there that allow them to organize their activities, to create a resume. So it really is a place where they're able to search colleges and really discover new colleges and then get information about them. And even if they are not connected to a SCORE high school, when it does come time for them to apply, they can actually apply directly from there, whether their counselor is a part of a SCORE high school or not. And the counselor can still send documents to colleges using whichever platform they're on, whether that be Naviance, Maya Learning. Counselors can still do everything in the exact same way, while the student enjoys kind of a seamless process of applying, making it a little more streamlined.
Okay. You mentioned tools in there to help students research schools. What kind of tools are in there, and do they cover only the coalition schools, or tell me how that works?
Yeah. So we've heard from students and counselors alike that the SCORE platform is super easy to use. And students really love those college fit quizzes and those career assessments that I was talking to you about, in addition to the ability to collaborate on their college list and resources that'll help them stay organized. You were asking again.
Can they only research coalition schools?
Right. So, yes. So the SCORE platform has all schools, both 2-year and 4-year. So students can look up any college, not just coalition member schools. However, there are ways to filter or search for schools based on size, based on location, based on those things. And there also is a filter where they can look for coalition member schools. So for us, we know coalition member schools are smart college choices because they have high graduation rates, high retention rates, as well as graduate students with low to no debt. So if that is something that a student is interested in, they can actually filter by coalition member schools, so they can look at some of those schools that we know are smart college choices.
Okay. So, say a student has their college list, and they've got some coalition schools on there. Not all of them. Why would a student? Why should a student consider applying to colleges through the coalition app versus the Common App, or directly apply?
So one reason that students might choose to use the coalition application is the easy to use fee waiver piece. So I did mention earlier that I was able to attend college thanks to the generous financial aid of my undergraduate institution. But applying to college and paying that fee was something that was a big barrier for me and my family. The only way that I was able to go was actually to fill out the paper application, because that's what we did back in that day. If you wanted a application fee waiver, you filled out the paper application. So now we've got it actually built into the tools that SCORE offers. So if a student fills out their profile in SCORE, let's say that they receive free or reduced lunch, or maybe they've received a NACAC or a College Board fee waiver for testing, it'll automatically show them all of the coalition member schools that will offer them a fee waiver. And now some of our coalition member schools are able to even offer fee waivers to more students. So let's say a student identifies as a first generation college student, some schools will also offer a free fee waiver to them, no verification needed. So that's one reason why a student might choose to use the coalition application. And then obviously, if you are a student who attends a SCORE high school, I know there's over 700,000 students who are on the SCORE platform currently. If you are already on it, the application is built into the tools, and your high school counselor is also a part of that. So the counselor can help you and guide you throughout that process right in that same platform that you already use.
I'm glad you mentioned the fee waivers, because that's a fee that can strike a lot of families by surprise. When you start looking at students who are applying to 20 schools, and at $50 to $70 a school, that's not an insignificant fee for a lot of families. So you mentioned that a lot of schools will provide those fee waivers, but it doesn't sound like all schools. Is that correct?
Yeah, so there are the basic ones. So as I mentioned, if you receive free or reduced lunch, if you've received a testing fee waiver, we also serve transfer students through our application. So if they've received the Pell Grant, if they were a part of a TRIO program, those are the ones that all of our coalition members have agreed upon. That if a student answers those questions, they will get that
Okay.
automatic fee waiver. However, now that we're able to do some new things in the second year of our partnership with SCORE, knowing that there are schools who we're already asking additional questions on their supplement. This is a way that we can bring some of that to the beginning, so we can let more students know even earlier in the process that applying to school and paying that fee is not going to be a barrier for you to apply to, and then hopefully ultimately attend one of those colleges.
Got it. Got it. So if you are a student, free or reduced lunch, all of the coalition schools will offer you a free fee waiver. Okay, perfect. Thank you. I know you still have essay prompts in the coalition. Um, I think only 6 versus 7 on the Common App. And I took a look at them the other day, and they're similar. They're still students. They're still asking, for you to reflect and show growth. Any other areas that are should be noted between the coalition and the Common App?
I was going to say, I think in terms of the information that's gathered from the applications, a lot of it is going to be very similar, whether it's the coalition, the Common App, whether it be a state institution or an institutional app or a statewide system. A lot of that information is the same. A lot of the schools are doing holistic admission, so they do want to know not only the classes that you're taking, but they want to know how you spend your time, both in and outside of class, right? But I think one of the additional things that makes the SCORE platform unique and our partnership as the coalition with them is now SCORE has actually opened up that platform to community-based organizations. So one of the groups that we serve and we work very, very closely with are college access community-based organizations. So we actually have something called the CCID registry. It's over 500 now CBOs who we've vetted to make sure that they are assisting students for free. So they're not charging students to help them with admissions and financial aid. But because that is an audience that we know work very, very closely with students, especially first gen, low income, underrepresented minority, rural students, we want to make sure that we also are serving them and providing them with tools and resources. So in the partnership with SCORE, knowing that sometimes they don't have the tools and resources to connect with their students and help them in a way. So SCORE basically has now opened up that platform, that college search and discovery platform of theirs to community-based organizations so they can support their students in a very similar way that a high school counselor could. For us, we know this is incredibly helpful, especially for those students who might not even have a college counselor, right? And are really relying on that CBO to assist them through the admissions and financial aid process.
So, speaking from the counselor side, regardless if independent counselor, CBO, or high school, is there a way for the counselor to get in and, like on the Common App, you can sign in as an advisor, so I can see my students' Common App and make sure that they're checking all the right boxes. Is that possible also on the coalition?
So it's a little bit different because you are serving as a collaborator in the Score platform. So I know that there is a way for you to download as a student. You can download your PDF of your application, and you can share that in different ways through a collaboration space. So yeah, it just is going to depend as well, right? If the counselor is at a Score high school versus if you're a CBO counselor or an independent counselor. So, but the thing is, this partnership with Score, we're just in year 2 now. So anything that we might not have right now is something that is definitely a possibility as we move forward.
Are there anything that you've come up with on your wish list that are in the works for the coming year that we should be aware of?
I would say there are a lot of really exciting things coming up, not just at the next year, but even in the next 2, 3 to 5 years. I think one of the things that we're super excited about is that really with Score, it's a network of people who are surrounding and supporting the student. And I think right now they have it where parents and guardians can also be in that same space. And for us now thinking about bringing CBOs, right, those community-based advisors into that same atmosphere and that same network that's supporting the student. So I just think it's exciting, and there will be some things that I'm sure will be announced in the coming year. But just really thinking of all of the resources and all the trusted people that are out there, really bringing them into one place and bringing them to the student. And allowing the student to not have to redo the work. So anything that they've already filled out, whether that be personal information, demographic information that might be on any other application for anything else, that being able to bring them into the platform is going to allow students to access those opportunities and see them a lot easier. I know that SCORE has already started a partnership with Matriculate that provides advising to students. One of our staff members just went into their student account on SCORE and saw that there was like a message that popped up that said, "Hey, did you know that you could get free college advising?" So that's one of the things that I know is in the SCORE platform now, and one of the many exciting things that I think are to come.
That sounds great. I think anything that will make this process simpler and less stressful, I am all in favor of.
Absolutely.
Friends, this concludes the first part of Linda's interview with Derek Terrell from the Coalition for College. I hope you join us next week for the final part. On Thursday's episode, Julie and I discuss a blog article by Rick Clark that encourages us to think like an admissions person when completing our applications and not the way most students and parents think. A listener comes in specifically directed to Lisa, asking for guidance and help around mental health in the college admissions process. So Lisa will be on to answer that question for us. And for our interview phase, Marissa Salazar is back, part 2 of 5. Marissa's doing a deep dive on 5 different types of visits you can take when you visit a college: open houses, daily visits, fly-in programs, admitted student visits, and self-guided tours. And we'll resume our spotlights in January. And friends, I close you out with a quote on the personal statement. I'm doing these 15 quotes on the personal statement because it's one thing you can really change really late in the game. And this is my favorite of all. And it comes from one of the giants in the professions, Eddie Pickett, who was at Tufts University when he wrote this article. But when I was at Pomona in December, Eddie was there. So I actually had a chance to have lunch with him. And this is what he said, and I love it. And I'm going to say it twice because I think it's my favorite of all 15. Who are you? It's about being reflective about your life, about your experiences, about what you're doing. I always tell students, it's not the what you're doing, but the how and the why you're doing them. Because I can clearly see what you're doing, but how and why, I can't see that. I can't jump into your mind. So when I put down your application, I want to feel like I just stepped out of your life. That is profound. This is what I'm always telling my students. It's the how and the why. I have to repeat this. This is my favorite of all 15 quotes. Who are you? It's about being reflective about your life, about your experiences, about what you're doing. I always tell students, it's not the what you're doing, the how and the why you're doing them, because I can clearly see what you're doing. But how and why, I can't see that. I can't jump into your mind. So when I put down your application, I want to feel like I just stepped out of your life. Eddie Pickett. Friends, see you on Thursday. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us and you'll get every single episode as soon as it is released. If you're interested, there are a few ways you can really support our podcast. You can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can help us pay our staff and our expenses by donating on our website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. I'm the producer of the podcast, but we have a fantastic team of 15. Shout out to our co-host, Dr. Lisa Ruff, Dr. David Williams, Linda Depker, Susan Tree, Vince Garcia, and Julia Esquivel. And to our substitute co-host, Sylvia Borgo. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Motvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs are from Kimberly Blass. Lily Parikh manages our Instagram. Our image editor is Talha Khan. Joyce Ducker does our website episode updates. And our webmaster is Stalianos Dimitriou. And if you want to have a coaching session with Lisa, Linda, or me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you have a question you want us to answer, or if you have a recommended resource or article you think we should discuss, just send it to questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. Our favorite method is for you to record your own voice at speakpipe.com YCBK. By the way, check out our website where you'll find lots of content that is not on any podcast app. Our website is yourcollegeboundkid.com. If you want to learn about other hot admissions topics, follow us on Twitter at YCBK Podcast. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting again with you every single Monday and Thursday.